I want to reveal to you how to speak to yourself in such a way that your manifestations will accelerate tenfold. What you are about to hear is not theory or speculation, but law. Immutable, eternal law that has existed since time began. I have tested this law. I have proven this law. And I stand before you as a witness to its unfailing operation. Let us begin with the fundamental truth. You are always talking to yourself. From the moment you wake until you drift into sleep, an inner dialogue continues unabated within you. Most are entirely unaware of this constant stream, yet it forms the blueprint from which your outer world is constructed. The first step toward accelerated manifestation is becoming conscious of this inner dialogue. You must realize that there is no separation between your inner conversations and your outer reality. They are one and the same, differentiated only by time. What you persistently say in your imagination today will harden into facts tomorrow. The world you see is your word made visible. Therefore, if you wish to change what you see, you must first change what you say within yourself. Now, how should you speak to yourself to manifest with tremendous speed and precision? First, you must speak from the end. This is the great secret. You must enter into your imagination and speak, as though your desire is already fulfilled, not as something that will be, but as something that already is. When you desire financial abundance, do not say to yourself, I will be wealthy or money is coming to me. These statements, though positive in nature, affirm lack in the present moment. Instead, your inner conversation must be, I am so grateful to be financially free. I am thrilled that my accounts are filled with abundance. How wonderful it is to live this prosperous life. Notice the tremendous difference. In the first instance, you speak of wealth as something outside yourself, something to be attained in some distant future. But in the second, you claim it as a present fact. Your inner conversation must always be from the fulfillment of desire, never from the wanting of it. I recall a gentleman who attended my lectures in New York. He was burdened with debt, his business failing, his confidence shattered. After learning this principle, he began to systematically revise his inner talking. Each night before sleep, he would conduct imaginary conversations with his banker, his clients, his family, all congratulating him on his remarkable financial recovery. He would hear their voices clearly in his imagination, feel the handshakes, experience the emotions of relief and success. Within 3 months, a series of unexpected business opportunities reversed his situation entirely. His debts were paid, his business flourished, and his entire financial world transformed. When he shared his story with me, he said, Neville, I did nothing in the outer world until the opportunities presented themselves. I simply changed how I spoke to myself. This is the law, and it works with mathematical precision. The outer world must reorganize itself to match your inner conversations. It has no choice, for consciousness is the only reality. And your consciousness is defined by the words you accept as true in your imagination. Now let me give you a specific formula for these inner conversations that will accelerate your manifestations tenfold. This formula consists of 4 elements that must be present in how you speak to yourself. First, your self-talk must be in the present tense. The creative power responds only to what is, not to what will be or what has been. When you declare I am, you are announcing a present fact to your subconscious mind, which must then externalize this declaration. I am wealthy is infinitely more powerful than I will be wealthy, because it places no distance between you and your desire. Second, your inner speech must be saturated with certainty. When you speak to yourself, there must be no doubt, no question, no wondering how your desire will be realized. Speak with the calm assurance of one who knows that what they are saying is an established fact. This certainty comes not from evidence in the outer world, but from your understanding of the law. I knew a woman who desired healing from a chronic condition that had plagued her for decades. In her imagination, she constructed an inner conversation with her doctor, hearing him say with astonishment, I can find no trace of your former condition. You are in perfect health. She repeated this scene nightly, speaking the words in her imagination with complete certainty, feeling the relief and joy such news would bring. Within weeks, her condition began to improve, and within months, her doctor spoke almost the exact words she had heard in her imagination. Third, your self-talk must be infused with feeling. Dry intellectual affirmations have little power to transform. When you speak to yourself, you must feel the reality of what you are saying. If you declare, I am surrounded by loving relationships, you must simultaneously offer warmth, security, and joy that such relationships bring. It is the marriage of words and emotion that creates the perfect imprint upon the subconscious. And fourth, your inner speech must be persistent. A few moments of aligned self-talk followed by hours of contradictory inner chatter will produce mixed results at best. You must guard your inner conversations with the same care with which you would guard a precious treasure, not allowing doubt, worry, or contrary thoughts to enter and take root. Now, my dear friends, let me tell you why most people fail to manifest their desires speedily. It is not because the law is flawed. The law is perfect and unchanging. It is because they have not fully grasped the connection between their inner talking and their outer reality. They speak of want and lack all day long, then wonder why one lack persists in their experience. Listen to yourself as you go through your day. Do you speak of problems, difficulties, and obstacles? Do you engage in mental conversations about why things cannot work out, why you cannot afford something, why opportunities are scarce? If so, you are using the very power I am describing to create these limitations in your life. Your inner conversation is the fabric from which your life is cut. If you speak of limitation, you create limitation. If you speak of abundance, you create abundance. It is that simple, and it is that exact. Let me give you a technique to transform your inner dialogue and thus accelerate your manifestations tenfold. Before you rise in the morning and before you sleep at night, enter into a state of relaxation. In this receptive state, consciously construct an inner conversation that implies your desire is already fulfilled. If you seek a promotion at work, hear your colleagues congratulating you. Feel their handshakes, their sincere smiles. Hear your family expressing joy at your achievement. Most importantly, hear yourself responding from the consciousness of the wish fulfilled, saying things like, yes, I'm grateful for this new position. It feels wonderful to be recognized for my contributions. Make this inner conversation as natural and as real as any conversation you have in the physical world. Include the tones of voice, the gestures, the surroundings, all the details that would be present if this conversation were taking place in the outer world. Then throughout your day, whenever your mind is not engaged in necessary activities, return to this conversation. Let it play in your mind like a favorite song that you cannot stop humming. I assure you, if you persist in this practice, your outer world must reshape itself to match your inner conversations. It is law, and law does not fail. Now, many of you are wondering, how long will it take for my manifestation to appear? The speed of manifestation depends on several factors. The intensity of your feeling, the consistency of your inner conversations, and your ability to remain faithful to the new concept of self all influence the time of arrival. But I can tell you this with certainty. When you master the art of speaking to yourself from the end, manifestations that once took years can unfold in months. Those that took months can appear in weeks. And those that took weeks may materialize in days. Remember always that time in our three-dimensional world is not the same as time in the imagination. In the imagination, the entire journey from desire to fulfillment can be collapsed into a single moment. When you speak to yourself as if your desire is fulfilled, you are operating in this timeless dimension, bringing the future into the present with the power of your word. I recall a student of mine who mastered this technique with remarkable results. He had applied for a position that seemed beyond his qualifications, a position hundreds of others sought as well. Rather than anxiously waiting for the decision, replaying in his mind all the reasons why he might not be chosen, he disciplined himself to hear only one inner conversation, his new colleagues welcoming him to the team, discussing projects they would work on together, sharing ideas as though he were already established in the role. He persisted in this inner talking for just over a week. Then, without any outer action on his part, he received a call informing him that not only had he been selected for the position, but that the committee had been unanimously impressed by his application. When he later spoke with the hiring manager, he discovered that certain decision makers had inexplicably felt drawn to his application over those of candidates with more extensive credentials. This is how the law works. The outer circumstances, the so-called facts of the case, are merely shadows. Your inner conversations are the substance from which these shadows are cast. Change the substance, and the shadow must change accordingly. Let me now address a question that frequently arises. What if my inner conversations have been negative for years? Can I truly overcome this pattern? The answer is an emphatic yes. The power to change your inner dialogue exists in the present moment, not in the accumulated momentum of the past. When you become aware that you have been speaking to yourself in ways that perpetuate limitation, do not condemn yourself. Simply begin now to speak differently. The subconscious mind does not reason or argue, simply accepts what the conscious mind impresses upon it. Begin now to impress upon it only what you wish to see manifested. If you have habitually spoken to yourself with words of self-criticism, replace this inner talking with words of self-appreciation. If you have told yourself stories of struggle and scarcity, begin immediately to tell your stories of ease and abundance. The past has no power except the power you give it through your continued attention. Withdraw your attention from what has been and place it fully on what you choose to be. I have seen individuals transform lifelong patterns of failure and frustration in remarkably short periods simply by becoming disciplined guardians of their inner speech. Your past inner conversations created your present, but your present inner conversations are creating your future. The power is always in the present moment. Now I want to share with you a profound secret about accelerated manifestation. The words you speak to yourself are powerful, but the questions you ask yourself may be even more so. When you ask a question, your mind must search for an answer. It cannot help itself. Therefore, the questions you habitually ask yourself direct the course of your thinking and consequently the course of your experience. If you constantly ask yourself, why am I so unlucky? Or why can't I ever get ahead? Your mind will dutifully supply reasons, whether they are true or not. But if you ask, why am I so blessed? Or why do wonderful opportunities constantly come my way? Your mind must search for evidence of blessing and opportunity. Transform your inner questioning to align with your desires. Instead of, can I afford this? Ask, how can I afford this? Instead of, why is this happening to me? Ask, what is the gift in this experience? Your mind will move in the direction of your questioning, and your manifestations will follow accordingly. I knew a gentleman who had struggled with finding suitable employment. In our conversation, I noticed that he continually asked himself, why won't anyone hire me? I suggested that he change this one question to, why am I so in demand in my field? He thought the suggestion simplistic, but agreed to try it. Each time the old question arose in his mind, he consciously replaced it with the new one. He reported that at first his mind went blank, having no ready answer to why he would be in demand. But he persisted. And gradually his mind began to supply answers, his unique combination of skills, his reliability, his creativity in solving problems. As he focused on these answers, his entire self-concept shifted. Within 3 weeks, he received 2 job offers, both offering higher compensation than he had dared to expect. This is the power of directed inner questioning. It is a form of self-talk that engages your creative faculties in a particularly potent way. Master this, and you accelerate your manifestations dramatically. Let us now address another aspect of speaking to yourself for accelerated manifestation. The words you use to describe your identity. The most powerful words in any language are I am. For these words define your self-concept, and your self-concept determines the entire range of what is possible in your experience. When you say I am, you are making a claim about your essential nature, and the universe must respond accordingly. Therefore, be extraordinarily careful about what you attach to these powerful words. I am tired creates more fatigue. I am broke creates more financial lack. I am confused creates more uncertainty. Instead, consciously choose empowering completions to I am. Even if your outer circumstances temporarily contradict these statements, speak to yourself with words that align with your desired state. I am prosperous. I am healthy. I am confident. I am surrounded by wonderful opportunities. Some will say this is lying to yourself. I tell you it is not. You are acknowledging the deeper truth of your being, the truth that exists in the imagination, which is the only reality. What you see in the outer world is merely a shadow, a reflection of past concepts of self. As you change your I am statements, you change the substance from which these shadows are cast. I recall a woman who had struggled with her weight for decades. Her inner speech was filled with statements like I am fat, I am undisciplined, I am destined to struggle with my weight forever. After learning this principle, she began to vigilantly guard her I am statements, replacing them with I am naturally slender, I am in love with healthy foods and activities, I am becoming more fit each day. At first, these statements felt foreign to her, but she persisted, especially in those drowsy moments before sleep, when the subconscious is most impressionable. Within months, her attitudes toward food and exercise transformed completely. She found herself naturally drawn to nourishing foods and enjoyable forms of movement. Her body responded accordingly, and she released weight that had seemed immovable for years. The principle is clear: your identity, as defined by your I am statements, creates the boundaries of your experience. Expand these boundaries by consciously choosing I am statements that align with your desires, and your manifestations will accelerate accordingly. Now let me share with you a technique that combines all we have discussed to create an extraordinarily powerful form of self-talk for rapid manifestation. I call it the congratulatory conversation, and it has produced remarkable results for countless individuals. In this technique, you construct an inner conversation between yourself and someone who would be aware of your achievement if your desire were realized. This person is congratulating you on your wonderful manifestation, expressing joy, perhaps even surprised at how perfectly everything has worked out. You hear their words clearly in your imagination, feel the emotions their congratulations evoke, and respond from the consciousness of having already achieved your desire. This imaginal conversation includes all the details that would naturally part of such an exchange. The other person might mention specific aspects of your success, ask how you feel about it, or share in your happiness. The power of this technique lies in its engagement of multiple senses and emotions, as well as its establishment of your desire as an accomplished fact that others are now recognizing. When you can hear others congratulating you in your imagination and feel the naturalness of responding from the state of fulfillment, your manifestation is already complete in consciousness and must externalize in your world. A student of mine wished to relocate to another city, but faced seemingly insurmountable financial and logistical obstacles. Using this technique, he constructed an inner conversation with his closest friend, hearing his friend say, I still can't believe how perfectly your move worked out. Everything fell into place so naturally. Are you enjoying your new home? He would then respond, feeling the satisfaction and relief of being comfortably established in his new location. He practiced this congratulatory conversation for just 15 minutes each day for 3 weeks. During this time, a series of unexpected events occurred. A job opportunity in the desired city came through a connection he had forgotten he had. A relative offered temporary living arrangements that made the transition affordable. And his current lease, which he had worried about breaking, was taken over by someone looking for exactly his type of apartment. Within 2 months, he had relocated just as easily as he had imagined in his congratulatory conversation. The obstacles that had seemed so formidable dissolved in the face of his transformed consciousness. This technique works because it combines all the elements of effective self-talk. It is in the present tense. The congratulations are happening now for something that is already accomplished. It carries the feeling of fulfillment. It engages multiple senses, and it reinforces your identity as someone who has already achieved their desire. Practice this technique daily, preferably in those drowsy, receptive states upon waking or before sleeping, and you will be amazed at how rapidly your outer world reorganizes itself to match your inner conversations. Now, my dear friends, I must address a critical point that many overlook. The acceleration of your manifestations depends not only on how you speak to yourself about what you want, but also on how you speak to yourself about what you currently see. When current circumstances contradict your desire, there is a tendency to give those circumstances power through your inner comments about them. You look at your empty bank account and say to yourself, I'm broke again, just as I feared. You receive a troubling medical diagnosis and tell yourself, this is terrible, I'll never recover fully. You experience a relationship difficulty and conclude, I'm just not meant to have love in my life. These interpretations of current events are also forms of self-talk, and they are extraordinarily powerful. They represent your agreement with appearances, and whatever you agree with, you anchor in your experience. Therefore, to manifest with tenfold speed, you must not only speak to yourself from the fulfillment of desire, but also revise how you speak to yourself about present circumstances. When faced with contradictory evidence, you must learn to say to yourself, this is a passing shadow, reflecting my previous state of consciousness. It has no power except what I give it through my attention and agreement. The new state I have entered in consciousness is the true reality, and it must externalize in my world. This is not denial, it is understanding the true nature of reality. What you see in the outer world is always the harvest of seeds planted in consciousness in the past. Your new self-talk is planting new seeds that must bear fruit in their appointed time. Do not give power to the harvest of old plantings by speaking of them as permanent realities. I knew a man who had received what appeared to be very concerning financial news. His business was failing and experts had advised him to declare bankruptcy. Instead of accepting this as the final word and reinforcing it with defeated self-talk, he chose to speak to himself differently. When thoughts of worry or fear arose, he would say to himself, this situation is temporary and has no bearing on my true financial state. My consciousness of abundance is the reality, and this consciousness must externalize in my world. Simultaneously, he maintained congratulatory conversations in his imagination, hearing his accountant express amazement at the remarkable turnaround in his financial situation. He did not ignore practical actions that needed to be taken, but he infused all his actions with this transformed consciousness. Within 6 months, his business had not only recovered but had expanded into new markets he had not previously considered. When he consulted with financial advisors of this turnaround, they were unable to explain how it had happened so quickly and so completely. But he understood. He had refused to speak to himself about his situation as fixed or final, refusing to give it power through his agreement. Here is another powerful technique for speaking to yourself to manifest faster. Use the phrase one remember when followed by the description of your current unwanted situation. This linguistic pattern places your current reality in the past, where it no longer has power over you. For example, if you are currently experiencing financial strain, say to yourself, I remember when I used to worry about money. I remember when I struggled to pay my bills. How different my life is now that abundance flows to me so easily. If you are experiencing physical discomfort, tell yourself, I remember when I felt pain in this area. I remember when movement was difficult. How wonderful it is now to feel such strength and ease in my body. This form of self-talk creates a psychological distance between you and the unwanted condition. By speaking of it as a past event, something you can now look back on from a position of fulfillment, you free yourself from its grip on your consciousness. And as your consciousness transforms, your outer world must follow. I want to emphasize the incredible power of gratitude in your self-talk for accelerated manifestation. When you speak to yourself with words of thankfulness for your desires already fulfilled, you establish a vibrational state that is in perfect alignment with what you seek to manifest. Gratitude is the feeling of having already received. And this feeling is the very essence of successful manifestation. Make it a practice to incorporate phrases like I am so thankful that, and I am so grateful for into your inner conversations. Complete these phrases with detailed descriptions of your desire as already yours. I am so thankful that my business is thriving beyond my expectations. I am so grateful for the perfect health that I now enjoy. I am so thankful for the wonderful relationship that blesses my life each day. The feeling of gratitude collapses time in manifestation. It brings the future into the present by acknowledging it as already received. In the state of genuine thankfulness, you are not wanting or needing or hoping, you are having and enjoying and appreciating. This state, maintained consistently in your self-talk, will accelerate your manifestations beyond what you thought possible. A student of mine applied this principle when facing a serious health challenge. Rather than speaking to herself with worry and fear about her condition, She disciplined herself to say throughout the day, "Thank you for my perfect health. Thank you for my strong, vibrant body. Thank you for my complete healing." She infused these words with the genuine feeling of gratitude one would experience upon receiving a priceless gift. Her physicians were baffled by the speed of her recovery, which far exceeded medical expectations. She understood that by speaking to herself from a place of grateful acknowledgement for health already received, she had activated a law that transcends physical limitations. I must also address the importance of how you speak to yourself when doubt arises, as it inevitably will for most. Doubt is a natural part of the human experience, especially when you are working with principles that contradict the apparent evidence of your senses. The key is not to try to eliminate doubt completely, but to speak to yourself effectively when it appears. When you notice thoughts of doubt or disbelief regarding your manifestation, do not fight against them or condemn yourself for having them. Instead, speak to yourself in this way: I understand that doubt is arising based on past experiences and limited understanding. I acknowledge it without giving it power. My faith in the law transcends this momentary doubt. The truth of my fulfilled desire remains unchanged, regardless of these passing thoughts. This approach neither suppresses doubt, nor allows it to derail your manifestation. It acknowledges doubt as a visitor passing through your consciousness, not as a permanent resident with any authority over your creative power. By speaking to yourself in this way, you maintain your alignment with your desire even in the face of questioning thoughts. Now, my dear friends, I want to share with you what I consider to be the ultimate acceleration technique in self-talk for manifestation. It is speaking to yourself from a state of absolute knowingness, not belief, not hope, not faith, but knowing. There is a world of difference between saying to yourself, "I believe my desire will manifest," and "I know my desire is manifested." Belief implies the possibility of non-belief. It contains within it the seed of its opposite. But knowingness is absolute. It does not consider alternatives. It does not entertain doubts. It rests in complete assurance. To speak to yourself from knowingness, your inner conversations must have the same tone of certainty that you would use when stating that the sun will rise tomorrow. You do not hope the sun will rise. You do not affirm that the sun will rise. You know it as an unquestionable fact. This is the level of certainty with which you must speak to yourself regarding your desire. I know I am now financially free. I know my body is perfectly healthy. I know my ideal relationship is manifested. These statements, when spoken from genuine knowingness, rather than as attempts to convince yourself, carry immense manifestational power. This knowingness comes from understanding that imagination creates reality. And what you have imagined with feeling is already a fact on the level of consciousness. Since consciousness is the only reality, what exists in consciousness exists in reality, requiring only the passage of what we call time to become visible to our physical senses. I recall a woman who came to me in deep distress over her relationship with her adult daughter. Years of misunderstanding and hurt had created what seemed an insurmountable wall between them. After learning this principle, she began to speak to herself exclusively from a state of knowingness about the restoration of their loving bond. Her inner conversations were not pleas or observations, but calm, certainty-filled statements. I know that my relationship with my daughter is healed completely. I know that we understand each other perfectly now. I know that love flows freely between us. She maintained this knowingness despite having no contact with her daughter for several months. Then, without any outward action on her part, she received a letter from her daughter expressing a desire to heal their relationship. Their subsequent reunion unfolded with a grace and ease that seemed miraculous to those unaware of the principle she had been applying. The wall that had seemed so solid dissolved because she knew in consciousness that it was not real. This is the power of speaking to yourself from knowingness. It transcends techniques and methods. It is not something you do, but something you are. And when you consistently speak to yourself from this level of consciousness, your manifestations will not merely accelerate, they will appear in your world with a naturalness and a perfection that may well astonish you. I have shared with you tonight the most powerful techniques for speaking to yourself to manifest tenfold faster. Yet there is one final element I must address, and it may be the most important of all. It is the source from which your self-talk originates. When most people engage in techniques of affirmation or positive self-talk, they do so from their current state of consciousness, a consciousness of wanting, of not having, of trying to change conditions. But there is a far more powerful approach to first enter the state of your wish fulfilled, and from within that state, allow your self-talk to flow naturally. Rather than using self-talk to try to reach your desired state, first use your imagination to enter the state, and then listen to what you naturally say to yourself from within it. This reverses the usual process and yields remarkably accelerated results. To do this, use your imaginative faculty to create a scene that implies your desire is already fulfilled. Enter fully into this scene, employing all your senses until it feels more real than your physical surroundings. From within this state, notice what you are naturally saying to yourself. These authentic inner conversations, arising from the consciousness of fulfillment rather than consciousness of wanting, carry tremendous manifestational power. A gentleman who had struggled for years to build a successful business practiced this technique faithfully. Rather than continuously affirming business success while feeling anxious and uncertain, he would first use his imagination to create a vivid scene of sitting in his office, reviewing outstanding financial reports, feeling the satisfaction of achievement. Once he had fully entered this state, he would notice the natural self-talk that arose. This business has unfolded even more perfectly than I anticipated. Each decision has led to greater success. How wonderful to see these results manifested. He discovered that this self-talk, arising organically from the state of fulfillment, felt entirely different from his previous affirmations. It carried no hint of strain or effort, no underlying anxiety about results. It was simply the natural expression of his consciousness in the state of his wish fulfilled. Within 9 months of practicing this approach, his business transformed completely. Opportunities he could not have logically anticipated presented themselves, ideal clients sought him out, and financial abundance flowed to him with an ease that seemed effortless. This is the ultimate secret for speaking to yourself to manifest faster. Let your self-talk arise from within the state of fulfillment, rather than using self-talk to try to create the state. The difference in results will astound you. My dear friends, I have shared with you tonight the most powerful principles and techniques for speaking to yourself to manifest tenfold faster. I have given you the law, and the law never fails. It is now up to you to apply what you have learned with discipline and persistence. Remember that your inner conversations are the causative force in your life. Guard them, direct them, infuse them with the consciousness of your wish fulfilled. And watch as your outer world transforms to match this new pattern established in consciousness. Begin tonight as you prepare for sleep. Enter the state that would be yours if your desire were already fulfilled. Feel the naturalness of it, the rightness of it. And from within this state, engage in self-talk that reflects your achievement. Do this faithfully, and the results will appear in your world with a speed and perfection that will delight and amaze you. For this is the promise and the power of the law, as within, so without. As above, so below. Change your inner conversations, and you change your world. There's no other way, but if consciousness is the only reality, and your self-talk defines your consciousness. I leave you with this absolute assurance: the power to transform your life completely, to manifest all that you desire, lives within you now. It is your own wonderful human imagination, and it is activated and directed by how you speak to yourself. Master this, and you master life itself. When you pray, when you desire, do you beg and plead as though speaking to some distant deity who may or may not grant your wishes? Or do you know with unwavering certainty that what you have imagined in the theater of your mind is already accomplished? This is the secret I wish to impart to you tonight, to live as though God has already answered. Consider for a moment what it means to live in the end. Many approach manifestation backwards. They believe that when their desire is fulfilled in the outer world, then they will feel the joy, the relief, the satisfaction of having received it. But I tell you, this feeling precedes manifestation. The world is nothing more than the outpicturing of states of consciousness. If you would claim a thing as yours, you must first assume the feeling of already possessing it. There's a passage in Scripture that illuminates this principle with crystal clarity. Therefore, I tell you, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours. Not that you will receive it at some distant point in the future, but that you have received it now. The secret is to live from the end, not for it. Let me share a simple truth that many find difficult to accept. The world you perceive is nothing more than your own consciousness pushed out. There is no one to change but self. There is nothing to change but your concept of self. If you would change the outer world, you must first change your inner assumptions. Tonight, I wish to guide you to that place within yourself where creation has already been completed. For all that you could ever desire already exists in the realm of infinite possibility. Your task is not to create it anew, but to simply appropriate what already is. Imagine, if you will, that you have a desire. Perhaps it is financial abundance, vibrant health, a loving relationship, or success in your chosen field. The natural tendency of man is to look at present circumstances and say, but how? How can this desire possibly be realized given my current reality? And in that moment, imagination is subordinated to the evidence of the senses. This is the cardinal error. Your senses show you only the effects of past beliefs and assumptions. They cannot show you what is possible. They can only report what has already been manifested. To concern yourself with the how is to place limitations upon the limitless. Instead, I urge you to ask yourself, how would I feel if my desire were already fulfilled? Then, in the quiet of your own mind, capture that feeling. For feeling is the secret. Every night before you enter into sleep, assume the consciousness of already being what you want to be, of already having what you want to have. Sleep, that mystic state, is the time when the subconscious mind is most impressionable. As you slumber, the seed you have planted will be watered and nourished, growing into manifestation by laws divine and perfect. There was a man who came to me in dire financial straits. His business was failing, debts were mounting, and fear had taken hold of his mind. I told him what I'm telling you, to live as though God had already answered his prayer for abundance. Each night, this man would feel the joy and relief of financial freedom. He would count imaginary money, feel crisp bills between his fingers, write imaginary checks with ease and gratitude. He would fall asleep in this state of wealth consciousness. Within a month, an opportunity presented itself that he could never have conceived of through conscious reasoning. A merger was proposed that not only saved his business but expanded it beyond his highest expectations. The outer circumstances rearranged themselves to match his inner assumption of wealth. Was this mere coincidence? I tell you, there is no such thing as coincidence. There is only the working of law. As a man assumes, so does he become. Consider the story of another who desired health after years of chronic illness. Instead of focusing on symptoms and limitations, she began to live from the state of perfect health. In her imagination, she moved with vitality, breathed deeply without pain, and gave thanks for her strong, healthy body. She persisted in this assumption despite all evidence to the contrary. Medical tests eventually confirmed what she had already known in consciousness. Her condition had dramatically improved. The doctors called it spontaneous remission. But there was nothing spontaneous about it. It was the natural result of a shift in consciousness. For consciousness is the only reality. You see, the outer world must and will conform to your inner assumptions. It has no choice in the matter, for that is the law by which creation operates. Now, let us address a question that inevitably arises. What of efforts that seem to fail? What of desires that remain unfulfilled despite applying these principles? I say to you that there is no failure in the proper use of imagination. What appears as failure is simply the revelation of a conflict within consciousness. Perhaps you affirm one thing while deeply believing another. Perhaps you mentally argue against your own good. Or perhaps, and this is often the case, you have not truly assumed the feeling of the wish fulfilled with sufficient intensity and persistence. For imagination to be effective must be faithful. You cannot mentally vacillate between states of having and not having. You must be single-minded in your assumption. As James warned, he who wavers is like a wave of the sea, driven and tossed by the wind. That person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Living as though God has already answered means maintaining your assumption despite all evidence to the contrary. It means being faithful to the unseen reality of your desire fulfilled, while the senses still report the old story. This faithfulness is not always easy. The world will test your resolve. Friends and family may mock your new attitude when circumstances have not yet changed. Your own doubts may arise like specters in the night. This is the wilderness period, the interval between your assumption and its manifestation in the outer world. During this period, you must guard your mind as one would guard a precious treasure. For your mind is indeed the treasury from which all your experiences are drawn. Mental diets are as necessary as physical ones. Feed your mind with the assumption of your wish fulfilled, and starve all contrary thoughts by withdrawing attention from them. Let me tell you something of the nature of assumption. An assumption is not a verbal statement, though it may begin as one. A true assumption is a state of consciousness, a mood, a feeling that permeates your entire being. When you genuinely assume a state, you think from it, not of it. There is a world of difference between the two. To think of being wealthy is to implicitly acknowledge that you are not wealthy now. But to think from wealth is to view the world through the eyes of a wealthy person. How would you react to a friend's request if you were wealthy? How would you plan your day? What thoughts would cross your mind as you make purchases or review your finances? This is thinking from the state, and it is this type of thinking that has the power to transform your world. For as you assume a state, you are transferred into it. Your assumption, though false to your senses, if persisted in, will harden into fact. There is a technique I have often shared that aids in making this transfer of consciousness. I call it revision. At the end of each day, before you enter into sleep, review the events that were not in harmony with your ideal. In your imagination, rewrite these scenes as you would have wished them to be. If you had a disagreement with a loved one, revise it to reflect understanding and harmony. If you received disappointing news, revise it to reflect the news you would have wanted to hear. This is not mere wishful thinking or denial of reality. This is the conscious exercise of your divine power to create reality. For remember, there is no reality outside of consciousness. What you take to be an objective, immutable world is really a malleable, plastic substance waiting to be shaped by your assumptions. The Bible tells us that God called forth that which did not exist as though it did, and so it came to be. This is the pattern we are to follow. Now, let me address a common misconception. Some believe that this teaching encourages passivity, that one need only imagine and then wait for desires to manifest without taking action. This is a misunderstanding of the principle. Action will always be necessary in this world of effects, but the action that stems from a changed consciousness is qualitatively different from the action that is taken in an attempt to change consciousness. When you assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, you will be compelled from within to take whatever action is necessary for its manifestation. This action will feel natural, effortless, and inspired rather than forced or contrived. A student once asked me, "But Neville, shall I not make plans for the future?" I replied, "Make your plans in accordance with the state you have assumed. If you have assumed wealth, make the plans a wealthy person would make. If you have assumed health, make the plans a healthy person would make. Your actions must be in alignment with your assumption. This is walking by faith and not by sight. Faith is nothing more than consciousness of being that which you desire to be. Walking by faith means living from the state of consciousness of your wish fulfilled, while your senses may still tell you otherwise. I recall a letter from a woman who had attended one of my lectures. She had been separated from her husband for many years and desired reconciliation, though there had been no contact between them. After hearing these principles, she began to sleep each night in the assumption that her husband was beside her. She would feel his presence, speak to him in her imagination, and feel the joy of their reunion. Within 2 weeks, she received a telephone call from him. He was in town and wished to see her. Their meeting led to a complete reconciliation, and they never again separated. What brought this about? Not her actions in the outer world, for she had taken none. It was her shifting consciousness, her faithful assumption that brought about the change in circumstances. Now, some of you may be wondering about time frames. How long, you ask, will it take for my assumption to materialize in the outer world? This is a natural question, but one that betrays a misunderstanding of the process. Time is not a factor in the operation of this law. What is a factor is the intensity of your assumption and your faithfulness to it. Some desires manifest instantly, others take longer to unfold. The key is to continue living from the end, undeterred by the passage of time and the lack of physical evidence. Remember the story of Joseph in Scripture. He had a dream, a vision of his brothers bowing down to him. Years passed, and circumstances seemed to take him further and further from his vision's fulfillment. He was sold into slavery, falsely accused, imprisoned. Yet in God's perfect timing, every detail of his dream was realized. This teaches us an important lesson. The vision has its own appointed hour. It ripens, it flowers. If it seems long, wait, for it is sure, and it will not be late. Your role is not to set the timetable, but to maintain the assumption that your desire is already fulfilled. Now I'd like to speak about something that many spiritual teachings neglect: the importance of your self-concept in the manifestation process. For you cannot long maintain an assumption that is at odds with your concept of self. If deep within you believe yourself unworthy of love, you may find it difficult to sustain the assumption of being in a loving relationship. If you secretly believe that wealth is corrupting, or that wealthy people are somehow immoral, you will sabotage your efforts to manifest abundance. Therefore, the greatest assumption of all is that of being God's beloved child, heir to all the riches of heaven and earth. As you read in Scripture, all things are yours. This is not a statement of future possibility, but of present fact. All that the Father has is already yours. When you truly accept this, you will find it easier to live from the state of your wish fulfilled, whatever that wish may be. For you will know that you are not seeking to get something you lack, but simply to claim what is already yours. This brings us to another crucial aspect of living as though God has already answered: gratitude. Genuine gratitude is not merely being thankful for what you have received in the past or hope to receive in the future. True gratitude springs from the knowledge that what you desire is already yours in consciousness. Gratitude then becomes the feeling tone of your assumption. You give thanks not to make something happen, but because it has already happened in the one reality that truly matters, the reality of consciousness. There was a woman who desired a specific amount of money to pay off debts that had accumulated over years. Rather than focusing on the debts and the lack of money, she began to live each day in a state of gratitude for having received this sum. She would count the exact amount in her imagination before sleep. She would feel the relief, the freedom, the joy of debt-free living. She maintained this attitude of gratitude for several weeks, telling no one of what she was doing. Then, through a series of events that no one could have predicted, involving an overlooked insurance policy and a small inheritance, she received almost to the penny the exact sum she had been imagining. Was this a miracle? By the world's standards, perhaps. But by the standards of the law we are discussing, it was simply the natural outcome of her faithfully assumed state. For that which is assumed, if persisted in, must objectify itself in the outer world. I want to address something that is often misunderstood in spiritual teachings: the nature of God. For if you are to live as though God has already answered, you must understand who this God is that answers prayer. God is not some being separate from yourself, waiting in the heavens to grant or deny your petitions based on some arbitrary standard of worthiness. God is your own wonderful human imagination. This is the creative power that shapes your world. This is the I am at the center of your being. When Scripture says, I am that I am, it is revealing the nature of God and the nature of man, for they are one. Whatever you attach to the phrase one am in your consciousness becomes your reality. I am poor. I am wealthy. I am loved. I am neglected. I am healthy. I am sick. These are all creative statements. Therefore, when you imagine your desires fulfilled and feel the reality of it, you are experiencing God answering your prayer in the only place prayer is ever answered, in consciousness. Living as though God has already answered means claiming your rightful place as a creative being made in God's image. It means recognizing that the power to shape your life lies not in some external force, but in your own consciousness. Let me share with you an experience that illustrates this principle in action. Years ago, a young man attended my lectures who had been seeking employment without success. He had the qualifications, he had the experience, but doors seemed to close before he could even present himself. After learning these principles, he began to sleep each night in the assumption that he was employed in the position he desired. He would feel himself sitting at the desk, interacting with colleagues, receiving his paycheck. Within 10 days, he was called for an interview at a company he had not even known. A mutual acquaintance had recommended him. The position offered was even better than the one he had been imagining, with greater responsibility and higher compensation. What brought this about? His change of consciousness. You see, the world is not responding to your wishes, your hopes, or your efforts. It is responding with mathematical precision to your state of consciousness. Change the cause, consciousness, and you change the effect, circumstances. Now let us delve deeper into the practical application of this principle. How exactly does one live as though God has already answered? It begins with a decision to mentally dwell in the state of the wish fulfilled, despite all appearances to the contrary. This decision must then be followed by mental and emotional discipline. Throughout your day, whenever your thoughts drift back to the problem or the lack, gently bring them back to the solution, to the state of fulfillment. This is the practice of mindfulness applied to creative imagination. There are specific times when this practice is most effective. The moments before sleep and upon first awakening are particularly potent, for it is during these twilight states that the conscious and subconscious minds are most permeable to one another. As you lay your head upon the pillow, mentally construct a scene that would imply your desire has been fulfilled. Make it as vivid and as real as possible. Involve all your senses. What would you see? What would you hear? What would you touch? How would you feel emotionally? Then allow yourself to fall asleep within this imaginative act. Similarly, in those drowsy moments upon awakening, before the concerns of the day flood in, revisit your imaginal scene. Feel again the joy, the gratitude, the fulfillment. This plants the seed deeply in the fertile soil of the subconscious mind. Throughout your waking hours, there will be moments when doubt arises. This is natural. The senses are persistent in their reports, and old habits of thought do not yield easily. When this occurs, do not fight or resist these thoughts. Instead, gently return to your assumption. Remember, energy flows where attention goes. Withdraw attention from the unwanted state and place it firmly in the state of your wish fulfilled. A technique that many find helpful during these moments is the simple question, how would I be feeling right now if my desire were already fulfilled? Then, without waiting for the logical mind to intervene, immediately adopt that feeling state. Feeling is the secret, the bridge between imagination and manifestation. Now, there may be those among you who are thinking, but this all seems like self-deception. Isn't it dishonest to pretend that I have something when clearly I don't? This question reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of the nature of reality. What you perceive as solid, immutable reality is actually the shadow cast by previous states of consciousness. Your physical environment, your circumstances, your relationships, all are projections of states you have occupied in consciousness. They have no independent reality apart from the meaning and power you give them. Therefore, when you assume a new state in consciousness, you are not lying to yourself or practicing self-deception. You are exercising your divine prerogative to choose the state from which you will view the world. This is not pretense, it is the highest form of truth, acknowledging the creative power of your consciousness. The world may call this madness, but remember what Scripture tells us. The wisdom of God is foolishness to men. Those who understand this principle and apply it consistently find that the world has no choice but to reshape itself around their assumptions. I am often asked about desire, its nature, and its role in this process. Some spiritual teachings suggest that desire itself is the root of suffering and should be transcended. Others teach that desire is God's way of guiding us toward our highest good. My understanding is this: desire in its purest form is God's voice within you, calling you toward the expansion and fuller expression of life. However, desire becomes problematic when it is rooted in a sense of lack or incompleteness, when you believe that you need this thing outside yourself to be whole or happy. The secret is to desire from a position of fullness, not emptiness. To want what you want because it would be a joyful expression of life, not because you believe it would complete you. This subtle distinction makes all the difference in how your desire is manifested. When you live as though God has already answered, you are desiring from fullness. You are claiming that in consciousness your desire is already fulfilled. You are complete, whole, lacking nothing. From this state, manifestation flows naturally and effortlessly. Let me address another question that frequently arises. What if my desire involves other people? Surely I cannot control another's free will. This concern stems from a misunderstanding of both the nature of consciousness and the nature of free will. Everyone in your world is an aspect of your consciousness pushed out. This does not mean they lack free will. It means that real them that appears in your reality conforms to your assumptions about them. If you assume that someone is uncooperative, that version of them will appear in your experience. If you assume they are helpful and kind, that is the version you will encounter. This is not manipulation, it is the law of consciousness in operation. Therefore, when your desire involves others, you need not worry about infringing upon their free will. Simply assume that they are already the way you desire them to be. In your imagination, hear them saying what you wish to hear. See them doing what you wish them to do. Feel the satisfaction of this harmonious relationship. Then release them completely. Do not specify how or when they must conform to this assumption. Give infinite intelligence the freedom to bring about your desire in ways that serve the highest good of all involved. I recall a woman who had a strained relationship with her daughter-in-law. Despite her best efforts to be friendly, there was always tension between them. After learning these principles, she began to imagine conversations with her daughter-in-law that were warm and loving. She would fall asleep feeling the joy of this harmonious relationship. Within weeks, without any direct action on her part, her daughter-in-law's attitude began to soften. Invitations were extended, pleasant phone calls were received, and a genuine friendship began to blossom. The woman had changed no one but herself, her concept of her daughter-in-law, and her outer world reshaped itself accordingly. This brings us to another important aspect of living as though God has already answered: detachment from outcomes. While this may seem contradictory to what I have been sharing, it is actually complementary. To live in the end means to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. But attached to this must be a willingness to let the infinite wisdom of God determine the how and the when of its manifestation. Your role is to remain faithful to the state you have assumed. God's role, the role of your own marvelous creative consciousness, is to bring about the manifestation in its own perfect way and timing. This detachment is not indifference. Rather, it is supreme confidence in the perfect working of the law. It is the peaceful certainty that what has been assumed in consciousness must objectify itself in reality. It is the difference between white-knuckled determination and graceful allowing. Those who master this art of detached assumption find that their manifestations often exceed their specific mental pictures. They receive not just what they imagine, but something even more perfectly suited to their desires. For the infinite intelligence of God knows what you truly desire better than your conscious mind does. Now I want to address what might be called the shadow side of this practice. What happens when we unconsciously assume negative states? For the law works with equal precision whether our assumptions are positive or negative. Many live their entire lives assuming lack, limitation, illness, or conflict, and then wonder why these conditions persist despite their best efforts to change them. They do not realize that their assumptions, often hidden beneath the surface of conscious awareness, are creating the very conditions they seek to escape. This is why self-observation is so crucial. Begin to notice the assumptions that underlie your thoughts, words, and emotions. What are you accepting as true about yourself and your world? What states are you unknowingly occupying? When you identify a negative assumption, do not fight or resist it. Remember, what you resist persists. Instead, simply withdraw your attention from it and place it lovingly on the assumption you wish to embody. For consciousness cannot serve two masters. It will follow where attention leads. There is a phenomenon I have observed in the application of this principle that I call the crisis of faith. Often just before a desire manifests, circumstances seem to worsen. It is as though the old state of consciousness is making a final stand before surrendering to the new. During this crisis, many abandon their assumption and revert to the old state, not realizing how close they were to success. This is the time for renewed faithfulness to your assumption. This is when living as though God has already answered is most powerfully tested and most powerfully demonstrated. Those who remain steadfast during this crisis, who continue to live from the end despite contrary evidence, are those who most quickly and dramatically manifest their desires. They have passed the test of faith, proving they are ready to embody the state they have assumed. Let me share with you a concept that may help during these times of testing, the Sabbath. In the biblical tradition, the Sabbath represents rest, the cessation of labor. In the context of conscious creation, it signifies that point where you rest from your mental labors, knowing the work is complete in consciousness. To enter this Sabbath state is to feel such certainty about your assumption that you no longer feel the need to repeat the imaginative act. There is a deep knowing that what you have assumed is already done. This is the perfect state of detached assumption I spoke of earlier. As you practice living as though God has already answered, you will begin to experience synchronicities, meaningful coincidences that confirm you are on the right track. A book falls open to just the page you needed to read. A chance conversation provides the very information you were seeking. A seemingly random meeting leads to the perfect opportunity. These synchronicities are not accidents. They are the subtle workings of the law as the outer world begins to conform to your inner assumptions. They are confirmations that the bridge of incidents leading to your desire's fulfillment is being built. Welcome these signs with gratitude, but do not become dependent on them. Your faith must rest not on external evidence, but on the conviction that what is assumed in consciousness must manifest in reality. This is the true meaning of faith, the evidence of things not seen. As we draw toward the conclusion of our discussion, I want to emphasize one final point. This principle of living as though God has already answered is not merely a technique for manifesting specific desires. It is a way of life, a state of being that aligns you with your divine nature. When you truly understand that your consciousness is the one and only reality, that the world you experience is simply consciousness objectified, you will approach all of life differently. You will move through your days with a quiet confidence and inner peace that comes from knowing you are the author of your experience. You will no longer be a victim of circumstances, but a conscious creator of your reality. You will no longer plead with an external God, but will commune with the God within. Your own wonderful human imagination. You will no longer live in anxious anticipation of what might be, but will rest in the certainty of what already is in consciousness. This is the freedom that awaits those who master the art of living as though God has already answered. This is the promise of the principle we have explored tonight. In the days and weeks to come, I encourage you to test this principle for yourself. Start with something small if you wish, something that does not arouse intense doubt or resistance. Assume the feeling of having already received it. Live from that assumption. Watch as the outer world reshapes itself to match your inner state. As you prove the law in these small ways, your confidence will grow. You will be ready to apply it to progressively larger desires. Eventually, you will reach a point where no desire seems impossible, for you will have experienced firsthand the truth that all things are possible to God, the God of your own consciousness. Remember always that the secret of manifestation is not in doing, but in being. Not in future action, but in present assumption. Not in working toward your desire, but in living from its fulfillment. This is the pearl of great price, the treasure hidden in the field of your own consciousness. To possess it, you must sell all your former beliefs about the nature of reality, all your attachment to appearances, all your identification with lack and limitation. But oh, what a magnificent exchange! For in return, you receive the kingdom of heaven, the realization that all you could ever desire already exists within you as potential waiting only for your assumption to call it forth into expression. So tonight, as you lay your head upon your pillow, do so with this knowledge God has already answered. Your desire is already fulfilled in the only reality that matters, the reality of consciousness. From this state of fulfilled desire, fall asleep. Let this be your prayer, your affirmation, your unwavering assumption. And as the days unfold, watch in wonder as your outer world begins to mirror what you have inwardly assumed. For this is the law and the prophets, the secret of the ages now revealed to those with eyes to see and ears to hear. God has already answered. Live from that glorious assumption and watch as miracles unfold in your life.
Ladies and gentlemen, my beloved brothers and sisters, today I come to you with a word that will shake the very foundation of your spirit, a revelation that will transform your thinking, elevate your faith, and position you to walk in the fullness of God's promises. I speak to you not as mere men and women, but as chosen vessels, as kings and queens in the making, as the elect of the Most High, who have been tested, refined, and prepared for a season of divine overflow. Many of you have been through trials that made you question your calling. You have endured storms that threatened to break you. You have faced betrayals, setbacks, disappointments, and long nights of wondering when God's promise would manifest. But I came here today to tell you your season of trial has come to an end. The days of struggling, barely making it, fighting for survival, they are over. The Lord has declared over you, "Well done, my faithful servant. Now step into abundance." You see, trials are not punishments. Trials are not meant to destroy you. Trials are divine classrooms, places of testing where God molds His chosen ones into leaders, influencers, and stewards of great wealth. Gold must go through fire before it shines. Diamonds must be pressed before they sparkle. Oil must be crushed before it flows. And you, God's chosen one, have been through your crushing, your pressing, your refining fire. And now it is time for your reward. The Word of God declares in Deuteronomy 8:18, "Remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you the power to get wealth, that He may establish His covenant." It is not the world that gives wealth. It is not luck. It is not the systems of men. It is God Himself who grants the power to generate wealth, to establish dominion, to live in the overflow. And why does He do it? That His covenant may be established. Let me tell you something. Poverty is not your portion. Lack is not your inheritance. Struggle is not your destiny. You were born for dominion. The enemy has deceived many into believing that they must suffer indefinitely, that they must live in scarcity to be humble. But let me ask you, how does a child of the King live like a beggar? How does an heir to the kingdom walk like a slave? The moment you recognize who you are, your posture changes, your mindset shifts, and your circumstances must bow to the authority of your revelation. You are not just anyone, you are God's chosen. Before you were born, He knew you. Before you took your first breath, He had a purpose for you. And part of that purpose is to be a conduit of His wealth. He is shifting you from borrower to lender, from worker to owner, from survival to significance. The trials were your training ground. The hardships were your preparation. You had to be tested so that when the millions come, you will not be consumed by them, but you will steward them for the glory of God. Let me remind you of Joseph. The young man had a dream of greatness, a vision of prosperity, but before the palace he faced the pit. Before the crown he wore chains. Before ruling he was falsely accused. But through it all God was training him. He was refining his character, sharpening his wisdom, preparing his heart, and when the moment came, Joseph stepped into his wealth, not as a selfish man, but as a divine steward. Likewise, your journey has not been in vain. Every tear you cried, every night you prayed, every moment you felt abandoned, it was all part of the preparation. You had to lose some things to gain better things. You had to walk through seasons of emptiness so you could appreciate the overflow. You had to endure trials to prove your faithfulness. And because you did not give up, because you remained faithful, because you held on to the promises of God, now the floodgates of heaven are opening for you. God is not just giving you money, He is giving you divine strategies. He is placing ideas in your mind that will birth industries. He is giving you favor that will open doors no man can shut. He is sending the right people to connect with you, the right opportunities to align with your purpose. But you must be ready to step into it. Many people pray for abundance but are not prepared to receive it. If God gives you millions today, will you manage it well? If He entrusts you with wealth, will you use it for His kingdom, or will you let it corrupt you? The reason God allows trials before the breakthrough is to shape your heart, to ensure that when the millions come, they do not take His place in your life. Let me speak prophetically into your life. You are stepping into an era where doors will open without struggle, where financial opportunities will locate you, where debts will be cancelled and wealth will flow into your hands. But hear me. This is not just about you. This is about kingdom expansion. This is about feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, funding the gospel, building schools, hospitals, and businesses that will glorify God. You're not just becoming a millionaire for your comfort. You are becoming a millionaire for kingdom impact. There is an anointing for wealth that is being released upon the chosen ones, and it is for those who have endured the test. The wealth of the wicked is stored up for the righteous, and now is the time of divine wealth transfer. God is positioning you to be a leader in the marketplace, a financier of the gospel, a pillar in your community. The world is waiting for you to rise. Your family is waiting for you to break generational curses. Your city is waiting for the manifestation of God's glory in your life. This is your time. This is your moment. The wait is over. No more delay, no more excuses. Walk boldly into the blessing. Step courageously into the overflow. The trials are over. Now you are stepping into your millionaire status. This is not wishful thinking. This is not motivational speech. This is divine revelation. The enemy has tried to keep you blind to your inheritance, but today your eyes are opening. The chains of limitation are breaking. The curses of poverty are being reversed. The season of just enough is turning into a season of more than enough. So I challenge you today, change your mindset. Stop thinking like a slave and start thinking like a ruler. Stop expecting scarcity and start expecting overflow. Stop waiting for permission and start taking dominion. Wealth is not coming to the lazy. Wealth is not coming to the fearful. Wealth is coming to the diligent, the bold, the faithful, the obedient. The trials were necessary. They humbled you, they refined you, they tested your faith. And now, because you endured, you shall reap the reward. You are not just going to make a little money, you are going to be a millionaire. You are going to fund the kingdom. You are going to change lives. You are going to walk in such abundance that generations after you will call you blessed. So get ready, get positioned, get aligned with God's principles. Sow, invest, plan, and expect the harvest, because what is coming to you is bigger than what you prayed for. It is exceeding, abundant, above all you can ask or think. It is supernatural wealth, divine acceleration, unstoppable favor. The trials are over, and now you're going to be a millionaire. Hallelujah. The problem with many of God's people is not that they lack the capacity for greatness, but that they have been conditioned by the world to expect struggle as their permanent reality. Some of you have been so accustomed to hardship that when God opens a door, you hesitate. When an opportunity comes, you question it. When the breakthrough is at your doorstep, you shrink back in fear. But let me remind you today, God does not bring you through trials just to leave you in the wilderness. He does not allow you to be tested without a reward in mind. Every struggle has a purpose. Every hardship has a lesson. Every delay has a divine reason. And when that purpose is fulfilled, God will do exactly what He promised. He will bless you beyond measure. There are some of you who have been faithful in seasons of lack, and God has been watching. He has seen how you have managed the little you had. He saw you give when it was hard to give. He saw you trust when it was hard to trust. He saw you serve when you were tired and weary. And because you have been faithful over little, He is now about to make you ruler over much. The reason God allows seasons of testing is not to break you, but to qualify you. You have been tested, and now you are stepping into promotion. The trials were the prerequisite for your next level. Many people want the crown without the process. They want the millions without the discipline. They want success without obedience. But God does not work that way. God does not pour oil on an unprepared vessel. God does not release wealth into untrained hands. If you give a child a kingdom, he will destroy it, not because he is evil, but because he lacks the maturity to manage it. That is why God has taken you through trials, so that when the millions come, they will not destroy you, but rather they will empower you. Look at David. Before he became king, he was a shepherd. Before he sat on the throne, he lived in caves. Before he wore a crown, he faced Goliath. Why? Because God had to train him in obscurity before he could trust him with authority. Some of you have been hidden, unnoticed, overlooked, and rejected, but that was part of your training. God was sharpening your skills, developing your character, teaching you patience. And now, the season of hiding is over. You are stepping into your rightful place, not as a servant, but as a ruler. The wealth is coming, the favor is coming, the open doors are coming. But will you be ready? There is a principle in the kingdom. God blesses those who are ready. Some of you are praying for millions, but you have not yet mastered the art of managing hundreds. Some of you are asking for abundance, but your mindset is still stuck in scarcity. God does not pour new wine into old wineskins. Before he releases wealth, he transforms the mind. That is why Romans 12:02 tells us to be transformed by the renewing of our mind. You cannot enter a millionaire's season with a poverty mindset. You cannot step into overflow while thinking like a beggar. Your mindset must shift before your reality does. The enemy has been working overtime to keep God's people ignorant of their inheritance. He knows that a believer with financial power is a dangerous believer. He knows that if you ever step into your wealth, you will break generational curses, fund the gospel, build schools, take over industries, and shift economies. That is why he fights you. That is why he tries to keep you bound in survival mode. He knows that as long as you are struggling, you are distracted. But today I came to announce that the chains are breaking. The deception is being exposed. The strongholds of lack and limitation are being destroyed. You are stepping into a season where money will no longer be your master but your servant. Money was never meant to control you, it was meant to serve you. That is why Jesus spoke so much about stewardship. He did not condemn wealth, he condemned the love of it. Money is a tool, a resource, a means to fulfill purpose. It is not your identity. It is not your security. It is not your God. When you understand this, you will stop chasing money and start attracting it. You will stop worrying about finances and start walking in divine provision. The reason many people struggle financially is because they have made money their master. But Jesus said, "Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you." When you shift your focus from money to purpose, from survival to dominion, from fear to faith, wealth begins to find you. The chosen ones do not beg for blessings. They walk in blessings. They do not chase favor, they attract favor. They do not wait for opportunities, they create them. This is the season where you must start thinking differently. You are not a victim. You are not at the mercy of the economy. You are not bound by what the world says you can have. You are a kingdom citizen, and in the kingdom there is no lack. In the kingdom there are no limits. In the kingdom, prosperity is your inheritance. Some of you have been conditioned by religion to believe that wealth is evil. But let me ask you, how can you fund the kingdom without resources? How can you be a blessing to others if you are struggling to survive? The Bible says a good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. You are not called to leave debts behind. You are called to leave a legacy. The wealth that is coming to you is not just for you. It is for your children, your grandchildren, and for the advancement of God's work. This is the time to position yourself. Get educated, develop new skills. Start thinking like an owner. Invest wisely. Seek wisdom. Do not let this opportunity pass you by. The trials are over, the season of struggle has ended, and now it is time to walk into your inheritance. If you have been faithful, God is about to show himself strong in your life. The days of barely getting by are finished. The days of endless battles are coming to an end. Now is the time to rise, to take dominion, and to walk boldly into your millionaire season. The enemy tried to keep you down, but he failed. The storms tried to break you, but they only made you stronger. The setbacks tried to delay you, but they only positioned you for greater. What the enemy meant for evil, God is turning for your good. The waiting was not wasted. The suffering was not pointless. Everything you went through was preparing you for what is about to happen. This is not just a new season. This is a new dimension. This is a supernatural shift. This is the manifestation of God's promise. So I say to you today, get ready. Expand your vision. Make room for abundance. Start preparing for what is coming. Do not be like the 5 foolish virgins who were not ready when the time came. Get your house in order. Set your affairs in place. Expect the overflow. You are about to see the hand of God move in your life like never before. You are about to experience supernatural favor. The trials are over. Now you are stepping into divine prosperity. This is not for everyone. This is for the chosen ones. This is for those who did not give up. This is for those who endured. This is for those who remained faithful when things got tough. And because you endured, because you remained steadfast, because you trusted in God, now the heavens are opening over you. Now the wealth of the wicked is being transferred to you. Now doors are swinging wide open. Now you are stepping into the reality of God's promise. The trials were only temporary, but the blessing will be permanent. You are going to be a millionaire, not for selfish gain, not for vain pursuits, but for kingdom impact. The wealth is coming so that you can be a solution to problems, a light in darkness, a testimony of God's goodness. The days of struggling are over. The trials have served their purpose. Now it is time to walk in the fullness of what God has destined for you. The season has shifted. The floodgates have opened. The trials are over, and now you are going to be a millionaire. The journey you have walked has been necessary. Every tear you shed, every hardship you endured, every moment of doubt you faced, it was all preparing you for this. God was not punishing you. He was promoting you. He was stretching you, expanding your capacity, and enlarging your territory. You see, the problem is not that God is unwilling to bless you. The problem is that too many people want a blessing they are not yet ready to handle. God cannot release wealth into unprepared hands. He cannot give increase to those who lack the discipline to sustain it. That is why He allowed the process. That is why He tested you. And because you have endured, because you have been found faithful, now He is releasing the increase. Some of you have been crying out to God, asking, Lord, when will my breakthrough come? And He is saying the breakthrough is already here, but are you ready to walk in it? Many people are waiting for a sign, waiting for a miracle, waiting for something external to change. But the truth is, before the external shifts, the internal must shift. Your mindset must shift. Your faith must increase. Your habits must align with the vision God has given you. You cannot expect millionaire status while thinking in poverty. You cannot expect financial increase while still operating in lack. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. If you see yourself as small, you will remain small. If you see yourself as incapable, you will remain incapable. But when you recognize that you are chosen, when you understand that you have been set apart, when you truly believe that you are destined for greatness, then nothing can stop the manifestation of God's promises in your life. The enemy does not attack people who have no purpose. He attacks those who are dangerous to his kingdom. That is why your trials were so intense. That is why the warfare against you was so fierce. He saw what you were about to become. He saw the wealth that was coming to you. He saw the influence that God was positioning you for, and He tried to break you before you could step into it. But He failed. You're still standing. You are still believing, you are still trusting, and because you did not give up, because you did not quit, now you are stepping into your season of supernatural release. The Word of God says that He will restore the years that the locusts have eaten. Some of you have lost time. You have lost opportunities. You have watched others move ahead while you felt stuck. But God is a God of restoration. He is not just giving you back what you lost, He is multiplying it. He is giving you double for your trouble. He is accelerating what seemed delayed. What took others 10 years will take you 1 year. What seemed impossible will become effortless. This is the season of divine acceleration, where things will happen so fast your head will spin. Many of you have been faithful with little, and now God is making you ruler over much. He is giving you divine strategies, supernatural wisdom, and ideas that will generate wealth for generations. But hear me, this wealth is not just for your comfort. It is for kingdom expansion. It is for breaking generational curses. It is for establishing businesses that will employ others. It is for feeding the hungry, housing the homeless, funding the gospel, and being a light in the marketplace. The wealth is coming with a purpose, and those who understand that purpose will see an increase beyond their imagination. Too many believers are waiting for wealth to fall from the sky. But the truth is, God blesses the work of your hands. That means you must be doing something, you must be building something, you must be sowing seeds of diligence, creativity, and obedience. You cannot sit idly and expect abundance to chase you. Faith without works is dead. You must align your actions with your faith. If you believe you are stepping into millionaire status, then start moving like a millionaire. Start thinking like an owner. Start preparing for what is coming. Make room for the overflow. The reason some people never walk into their blessing is that they never prepare for it. They pray for a harvest but never plant seeds. They ask for promotion but never develop the skills required for the next level. They expect abundance but still operate in a spirit of scarcity. But God is saying today, I am ready to release it, but are you ready to receive it? This is the time to take action. This is the time to get serious about your purpose. This is the time to move in faith, even when you do not see the full picture. Because when you move, heaven moves. When you step out, the provision meets you. When you obey, the doors open. The trials were never meant to destroy you, they were meant to reveal you. Diamonds are formed under pressure, oil is released through crushing, gold is purified in fire, and you, God's chosen one, have been through the process. You have been through the refining. You have been through the pressing. And now it is time for the unveiling. The season of hiddenness is over. The season of struggle has expired. Now you are stepping into the manifestation of everything God has spoken over your life. Some of you have been afraid to step out because of past failures. You tried before and it didn't work. You believed before and it didn't happen. But hear me, the past does not define your future. The enemy wants to keep you trapped in the cycle of disappointment, but today that cycle is breaking. This is a new season, a fresh start, a divine reset. The doors that closed before will now open. The opportunities that were blocked will now be released. The favor that was delayed will now accelerate. God is not limited by your past. He is not restricted by what has happened before. He is doing a new thing. Can you perceive it? Can you embrace it? Can you believe it? Because those who believe will see the manifestation. Those who expect it will walk in it. Those who align themselves with God's promises will experience supernatural results. This is not the time to shrink back. This is not the time to hesitate. This is the time to move boldly, to walk in faith, to take possession of what belongs to you. You have been anointed for such a time as this. You have been positioned for this moment. Everything you went through was leading to this. The struggles, the setbacks, the betrayals, the losses, they were all necessary for your elevation. And now the elevation has come. The shift has happened. The wealth is being transferred, the resources are being released, and those who have been faithful will now reap the rewards. So let me ask you, are you ready? Are you truly ready to walk in the fullness of God's blessing? Because this is not just about financial wealth. This is about purpose. This is about influence. This is about impact. Money without purpose is meaningless. Wealth without assignment is wasted. But when you understand why God is blessing you, when you align your wealth with His kingdom, when you use what He gives you for His glory, then there is no limit to what He will do in your life. The chosen ones are rising. The marketplace leaders, the kingdom financiers, the business owners, the innovators, the problem solvers, they are emerging. This is the time to build, to create, to take dominion. This is the time to establish systems that will last for generations. This is the time to break cycles of poverty and establish new legacies of wealth. The world will see the manifestation of God's power in your life. They will see the hand of God upon you. They will see that you serve a God who does not just supply your needs, but gives you more than enough. The trials were necessary, but they are over now. The waiting season has ended. The struggle has served its purpose. Now the abundance is being released. Now the overflow is coming. Now the millions are manifesting. And those who are ready will walk into it. Those who are prepared will take possession. Those who believe will see the impossible become possible. This is the hour. This is the moment. The season has shifted. The trials are over. Now you are going to be a millionaire. There is a sound in the spirit, a sound of breakthrough, a sound of release, a sound of divine acceleration. You have been waiting, you have been laboring, you have been enduring, but now the heavens are open over you. The storehouses of heaven are pouring out blessings that you do not have room enough to receive. The delay has been broken, the barriers have been removed, and what once seemed impossible is now within reach. You see, the enemy wanted to convince you that the trials would last forever. He wanted you to believe that struggle was your portion, that lack was your inheritance, that hardship was your destiny. But today I declare that the enemy is a liar. You were never meant to live in survival mode. You were never meant to beg for what already belongs to you. You were never meant to live beneath your calling. You were created for dominion, for abundance, for overflow. You were designed to be the lender and not the borrower, the head and not the tail, above and not beneath. And now you are stepping into that reality. This is a divine wealth transfer. This is supernatural favor. What took others decades to accomplish will happen for you in moments. Contracts will find you, clients will seek you out, partnerships will be established, doors you did not even knock on will open, your name is being spoken in rooms you have never entered. People are being divinely positioned to bless you, to invest in you, to elevate you, not because of luck, not because of chance, but because God has ordained it. Because the trials were only a test, and now that you have passed, you are stepping into your season of divine reward. There is a shift happening, a supernatural shift. It is happening right now, even as you hear these words. Things are aligning in the spirit. Mountains are being moved. Chains are breaking. And as you step forward in faith, you will see the evidence. You will see the manifestation. You will see the fulfillment of God's promises. The trials were necessary, but they are over. The struggle was a process, but it is complete. Now the floodgates of heaven are open. Now your millionaire season has arrived. Now is the time to walk boldly in the manifestation of God's promises. The trials were never meant to define you. They were meant to refine you. The struggle was never your destiny. It was only preparation for your elevation. You have been tested. You have been stretched. You have been shaped for this moment. And now the season of lack has come to an end. Step forward with faith. Move with expectation. Align your mind, your actions, and your spirit with the abundance that God is releasing into your life. This is not the time to shrink back, not the time to doubt, not the time to hesitate. Everything you have endured was for this purpose, to position you for increase, to establish you in dominion, to release you into wealth that will not just bless you, but will impact generations. The shift has happened. The doors are open. The opportunities are before you. The trials are over. Now, Step into your millionaire season with confidence, knowing that God has ordained it, heaven has sanctioned it, and nothing can stop what He has set in motion. The time is now.
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. This Word, this God of which we speak, is your own wonderful human imagination. It is the one and only creative power in the universe. There is no other power that can manifest your desires, for imagination is God Himself operating in the human mind. Let me share with you this eternal truth. Everything that now exists was once imagined. This entire vast world was once an image in someone's mind. Your house, your car, your relationships, your current circumstances, all were first imagined before they became what you call reality. Now let us turn to the Bible, for the Bible is not speaking of a history of ancient peoples or distant lands. The Bible is speaking of you here and now. It is the greatest psychological drama ever written, and every character in it is a personification of your own consciousness. When it is said, "Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind," it is telling you the secret of manifestation. For your consciousness, your mental attitude, your inner conversations must be transformed if you wish to transform your world. The outer world is nothing more than a reflection of your inner assumptions. Let me tell you a story that was shared with me by a lady in New York. She desired to move into a better apartment, but could not afford what she wanted. Instead of accepting this so-called reality, she began to sleep, as though she were already in her ideal home. Night after night, she would fall asleep feeling the satisfaction of living in a beautiful apartment. She would feel the texture of the carpets beneath her feet. She would see the view from her windows. She would feel the joy of entertaining friends in her new space. Within 3 months, through a series of events that no one could have predicted, she was living in an apartment far more beautiful than the one she had imagined, and at a rent she could easily afford. This is law, not luck. She understood that what she experienced in imagination with feeling would become her reality. You see, your imagination is not a separate power from reality. It is reality itself in its first form. When you imagine something, you are actually experiencing it on a higher level of creation. Your physical reality is merely the shadow, the outer picturing of your inner imaginative acts. Let me give you the first key lesson in manifestation. You must persist in your imaginal act until it feels natural. Most people fail because they do not understand this fundamental law. They imagine what they want for a moment, then return to their old patterns of thinking and feeling. This will not do. When I speak of feeling natural, I am not speaking of mere emotion. I am speaking of the feeling of the wish fulfilled. If you desire to be wealthy, how would it feel to be wealthy? Not the excitement of becoming wealthy, but the natural feeling of being wealthy. That is what you must capture and maintain in your consciousness. Remember the words, "He calleth those things which be not as though they were." This is not speaking of positive thinking or affirmations. It is speaking of a deep psychological truth that you must assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled and live from that assumption. Consider this right now. You do not have to remind yourself of your name or your current address or your present circumstances. They feel natural to you. This is the feeling you must achieve with your desire. It must become just as natural as your present facts seem to be. Let me share with you another principle. Your inner conversations must match your desire. What do you say to yourself when you are alone? What do you hear others saying to you in your mind? These inner conversations are far more important than any outer conversations you might have. If you would be wealthy, what would your inner conversations be? Would you still be talking to yourself about lack and limitation? Would you still be hearing congratulations from others about finally paying off your debts? Or would your inner conversations be those of someone who is already wealthy? This brings us to another vital point. You cannot serve two masters. you cannot maintain the consciousness of lack and expect abundance. You cannot feel poor and expect to manifest wealth. You must choose this day whom you will serve, your present circumstances or your desired state. Now many will say, but Neville, how can I feel wealthy when my bank account is empty? How can I feel successful when my business is failing? And to them I say, your physical senses show you only shadows, only the effects of past imaginative acts. You must turn your back on your senses and live entirely in your imagination if you would transform your world. Remember these words from Scripture: walk by faith, not by sight. This is not speaking of some blind religious faith. It is speaking of the faith in your imaginal acts. The faith that what you are imagining and feeling is real is indeed reality. And that your physical world must reshape itself to match your imaginal acts. Let me tell you of a man who came to one of my lectures in Los Angeles. He was facing bankruptcy in his business. Instead of accepting this as final, he began to imagine hearing his accountant tell him of unprecedented profits. He would fall asleep each night hearing this conversation. During the day, when doubts would arise, he would return to this imaginal conversation. Within 6 months, his business had completely turned around. The very accountant he had imagined speaking with came to him with almost the exact words he had heard in his imagination. This is law, my dear friends. This is how your world is shaped. Now let us delve deeper into the mystical power that lies within you. The Bible tells us the kingdom of heaven is within you. This kingdom is your imagination, and it operates according to immutable laws. Let me share with you another key lesson in manifestation that few understand. Your consciousness is the only reality. Everything you perceive is nothing more than yourself pushed out. The people you meet, the circumstances you encounter, the events that unfold in your life, all are reflections of your state of consciousness. When you truly grasp this, you will hold in your hands the master key to manifestation. Let me illustrate this with a principle I call revision. Suppose you had an unpleasant encounter today. Most people would accept this as fact and continue to replay it in their minds, thereby perpetuating that reality. But I tell you this, you can revise that event in your imagination, and through this revision, change not only your future, but your past. You see, time is a concept of your finite mind. To your infinite self, all things exist now. Therefore, when you revise an event in your imagination, feeling the naturalness of the revised version, you are actually transforming your world. This is not fantasy, this is law. I recall a lady who attended my lectures in New York. She had a strained relationship with her sister that had persisted for years. Instead of accepting this as unchangeable, she began to revise their past encounters. Each night before sleep, she would replay their conversations in her imagination, but now filled with love and understanding. Within weeks, her sister's attitude toward her completely changed, and today they share a beautiful relationship. This brings us to another vital principle. The state of consciousness from which you view the world is everything. If you would change your world, you must first change your state of consciousness. This is why it is written, let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. The Christ of Scripture is your own wonderful human imagination. When you imagine and feel your desire fulfilled, you are embodying the Christ consciousness. You are literally becoming that which you desire to be. This is not metaphor. This is absolute law. Consider carefully what state are you dwelling in right now. Are you conscious of being the person you wish to be? Or are you conscious of wanting to be that person? There is a vast difference between these states. One creates, the other perpetuates lack. Let me share with you a profound secret about states of consciousness. Every state exists now, fully complete. When you enter a state through your imagination and feeling, you are not creating that state, you are occupying it. It already exists in its fullness in what I call the fourth dimension. Think of it like this. Every room in a house exists simultaneously. When you move from the kitchen to the living room, you haven't created the living room, you have simply occupied it. Similarly, all states of consciousness exist now. Your job is not to create them, but to occupy them through your imaginal acts. This brings us to another crucial understanding. The feeling of the wish fulfilled is the secret of creation. When I speak of feeling, I do not mean emotion or sensation. I mean the feeling of being the person you want to be, of having what you want to have, of living as you want to live. Imagine now that you are the person you wish to be. Don't just see it, be it. Feel the naturalness of being that person. What would you see? What would you hear? How would you walk? How would you talk? What would your inner conversations be? This is not daydreaming. This is the actual creative act. Remember the words, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Your feeling of the wish fulfilled is that substance. It is the evidence that what you desire already exists in the spiritual realm and manifests in your physical world. Let me tell you of a gentleman who attended my lectures in San Francisco. He desired to be a successful author, but had faced nothing but rejection. Instead of focusing on the rejections, he began to sleep as though he were already a successful author. He would feel the weight of his published book in his hands. He would imagine opening his mail to find royalty checks. He would hear the congratulations of friends and family. Within 6 months, his manuscript was accepted by a major publisher, and today his books are read around the world. Was this coincidence? No, it was law. He simply understood that his imagination was God in action, and he used it lovingly on behalf of his desire. Now I'll share with you something about persistence in your imaginal acts. Many will imagine their desire for a night or two, then return to their old patterns of thinking. This will not do. You must persist until your imaginal act bears fruit in your physical world. Consider the parable of a fig tree. When Jesus cursed the fig tree, it did not wither immediately, but he did not go back the next day to see if his word was taking effect. He knew the law. When the disciples passed by later, they saw that the tree had withered from its roots. This brings us to another profound truth about manifestation that I must share with you tonight. The timing of your manifestation is not your concern. Your only responsibility is to remain faithful to your imaginal act. As it is written, though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come. Let me explain something about the law of harvest. When a farmer plants a seed, he doesn't dig it up every day to see it is growing. He knows that the seed has its own appointed hour. Your imaginal acts are spiritual seeds, and they too have their appointed hour. Your task is to plant the seed properly and to water it with your attention and assumption. Now let us discuss what I call the law of identical harvest. Whatever you are conscious of being, you will become. This is why Scripture tells us, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Notice it doesn't say, so will he become. It says, so is he. The moment you assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, you are that which you desire to be. I knew a man in New York who desired to double his income. Instead of focusing on the process of achieving this, he simply assumed he already had this new income. He would fall asleep each night feeling the joy of depositing larger checks. He would feel the satisfaction of easily paying his bills. He would experience the freedom of greater financial abundance. Within 3 months, an opportunity presented itself that no one could have anticipated. His company created a new position, and he was the only one qualified to fill it. His income didn't just double, it tripled. This is law, not luck. He simply understood that consciousness is the only reality. Let me share with you another principle that few understand. The world is yourself pushed out. Everything you see, everyone you meet, every circumstance you encounter is yourself pushed out. When you change yourself, your world must change to reflect your new self-concept. This is why it is written, "Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind." You are not trying to change things on the outside. You are changing your concept of self. And the outside must conform to this new concept. This is law. Consider carefully, what are you conscious of being right now? Are you conscious of being wealthy or poor? Loved or unloved? Successful or unsuccessful? Whatever you are conscious of being, you will continue to be until your consciousness. Here's another secret I must share with you. Your inner conversations are more important than any outer action you might take. What do you say to yourself when you are alone? What are others saying to you in your imagination? These inner conversations are creating your future. If you would be wealthy, your inner conversations must be those of a wealthy person. If you would be healthy, your inner conversations must be those of a healthy person. If you would be loved, your inner conversations must be those of someone who is deeply loved. Remember the words, death and life are in the power of the tongue. This is not speaking merely of your physical tongue, but of your inner speaking, your mental conversations. These are the real creators of your circumstances. Let me tell you of a lady who transformed her marriage through this understanding. Her husband was cold and distant. Instead of accepting this as reality, she began to hear him in her imagination speaking words of love and tenderness. She would fall asleep each night hearing his loving voice, feeling his warm embrace. Within weeks, her husband's attitude began to change. He became more affectionate, more attentive. Today they share the loving relationship she once only imagined. Was this manipulation? No, she simply understood that her husband was herself pushed out. And as she changed her consciousness of the relationship, he had to conform to her new assumption. Now, let us discuss something vital about the nature of desire itself. The very fact that you can desire something is proof of your capacity to realize it. As Blake said, what is now proved was once only imagined. Your desires are not random, they are God's promise to you of what you can be. When you feel a desire, you are actually feeling God's desire to express as that particular thing in your life. This is why Scripture tells us, delight thyself also in the Lord, and he shall give thee the desires of thine heart. The Lord here is your own wonderful human imagination. Consider this, every desire comes with the seed of its fulfillment. When you desire something, you are actually remembering your future. You are reaching into the infinite states of consciousness and selecting the state you wish to occupy. This brings us to another crucial understanding about manifestation. You must live in the end. What do I mean by this? I mean you must occupy the state of consciousness of having your desire fulfilled. You must live from the end, not for the end. Let us delve deeper into what it means to live in the end. When I tell you to live in the end, I am telling you to experience now what you would experience if your desire were already fulfilled. This is not mere pretense. This is the creative act itself. Consider the words of Scripture, before they call, I will answer. This is a profound spiritual truth. Your desire is already fulfilled in the spiritual realm. Your task is not to create it, but to appropriate it through your assumption. The state you seek already exists, waiting for your occupancy. Let me share with you what I call the law of reversibility. Just as physical events produce psychological states can produce physical events. If you are wealthy, you feel secure about money. But equally true, if you persist insecure about money, you must become wealthy. This is law. I recall a student who attended my lectures in Los Angeles. He was living in a small apartment, but desired a home by the sea. Instead of focusing on how to acquire such a home, he began to sleep as though he were already there. He would fall asleep hearing the sound of waves, feeling the ocean breeze, experiencing the spaciousness of his imagined home. Within 6 months, through a series of events that appeared to be coincidental but were actually lawful, he was living in a beautiful beach house. The remarkable thing was that it was far grander than the one he had imagined, yet it came at a price he could easily afford. Now, let me share with you another principle that few understand. The feeling of the wish fulfilled must become your predominant state. It's not enough to imagine occasionally. You must persist until the feeling of your wish fulfilled becomes your natural state. Think of it this way right now. You don't have to remind yourself of where you live or what your name is. These feel natural to you. This is the same feeling you must achieve with your desire. It must become just as natural as your present facts seem to be. Remember the words, prayer is the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Prayer is not begging or pleading. Prayer is assuming the feeling of already being what you want to be, having what you want to have. This is scientific prayer, and it never fails. Let me tell you something about failure in manifestation. There's no such thing as failure if you understand the law. What appears as failure is simply your resistance to assuming the feeling of your wish fulfilled. The moment you truly assume that feeling, success is assured. Consider this, everything in your world is a manifestation of your consciousness. If you don't like what you're experiencing, don't try to change the outside. Change your consciousness, and the outside must change. This is why Scripture says, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all these things shall be added unto you. The kingdom of heaven is your own wonderful human imagination. When you learn to dwell there, in the feeling of your wish fulfilled, your outer world must reshape itself to match your inner assumption. This is law. Let me share another secret about manifestation. Your outer world is always reflecting your inner conversations. What are you saying to yourself throughout the day? What do you hear others saying to you in your imagination? These conversations are creating your future. I knew a man who wanted to expand his business internationally. Instead of worrying about how this would happen, he began to hear congratulations from colleagues about his international success. He would fall asleep hearing these conversations. He would walk through his day carrying these imaginal conversations in his mind. Within a year, his business had expanded to 3 different countries. Was this accident? No, it was law. He simply understood that his inner conversations had to precede his outer experience. Now let me tell you something about time in relation to your manifestation. Time is not a distance we traverse. Time is a psychological space that varies according to our state of consciousness. When you are firmly dwelling in the consciousness of your wish fulfilled, what might have taken years can happen in days. Remember the words, one day is with the Lord as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as one day. This is not speaking of a deity separate from yourself. It is speaking of your own wonderful human imagination. When you are dwelling in the right state of consciousness, time becomes fluid. Your imagination never sleeps, never rests. It is constantly creating, constantly externalizing the contents of your consciousness. Therefore, what you assume before falling asleep is of paramount importance. The last 5 minutes before you enter sleep are the most potent moments for manifestation. In these drowsy moments, your conscious mind's resistance is at its lowest, and your subconscious is most receptive to impression. This is why Scripture tells us, He giveth His beloved sleep. Consider carefully what thoughts do you entertain as you drift off to sleep. Are they of lack, of limitation, of problems to be solved? Or are they of fulfillment, of achievement, of your wish fulfilled? Your last waking assumption is like a seed planted in fertile soil. Let me tell you of the technique I call revision before rest. Before you sleep each night, revise your day as you wish it had been. See the events of the day conforming to your ideal. Feel the satisfaction of everything having gone perfectly. This is not escapism. This is using the law of consciousness scientifically. Remember these words, in a dream, in a vision of the night, when deep sleep falleth upon men, in slumberings upon the bed, Then he openeth the ears of men, and sealeth their instruction. Your sleeping moments are when the deepest transformations occur. Now let me share with you the ultimate secret of manifestation. You must feel yourself into your wish fulfilled until you actually become it in consciousness. This is not pretense. This is the actual creative act. When you succeed in feeling yourself into the state of yours fulfilled, you have fulfilled it. I recall a lady who desired marriage but saw no prospects in her life. Instead of searching for a partner, she began to sleep as though she were already happily married. She would feel the wedding ring on her finger. She would hear her desired name being called. She would experience the joy of sharing her life with her beloved. Within 3 months, she met someone who matched her inner assumption perfectly. Today they share the beautiful marriage she once only imagined. This is law, not chance. She simply understood that her consciousness had to precede her experience. Let me give you one final principle. Your present moment is the key to all transformation. Don't think of your desire as something to be achieved in the future. Experience it as fact now in your imagination. The future only exists in your imagination anyway, so why not imagine it as you desire it to be? Remember the words, now is the accepted time. Now is the day of salvation. Not tomorrow, not next week, not when circumstances change, now. Your imagination is your redemptive power, and it can only operate now. In closing, let me remind you of this eternal truth. You are not working to create anything new. You are working to transform your assumptions about what already exists. The state you desire already exists in the infinite possible states of consciousness. Your task is simply to occupy it through your assumption. The secret of manifestation is not in doing, but in being. Don't ask yourself what you need to do to achieve your desire. Ask yourself what you would be doing, thinking, and feeling if you had already achieved it. Then occupy that state here and now. For it is written, I am that I am. This is not speaking of some distant deity. This is speaking of your own wonderful human imagination. Whatever you consciously assume yourself to be, you are. Whatever you consciously assume as true of your world is true. Therefore, go forth knowing that your imagination is God in action. Know that what you are conscious of being, you must become. Know that your assumptions persisted in must become your reality. This is law. Let no one tell you it cannot be done. Let no circumstance convince you it is impossible. For with God, your own wonderful human imagination, all things are possible to him that believeth. And remember always, you are not working to make something happen in the future. You are working to occupy a state of consciousness now. For your consciousness is the only reality, and from it all things proceed. Go forth now in this knowledge. Test it. Prove it. For in the testing lies your proof, and in the proof lies your freedom. You are limited only by your assumptions, and your assumptions are yours to change. The kingdom is within you, and that kingdom is your imagination. Use it lovingly on behalf of yourself and others, and watch your world transform before your eyes. Remember, you are the operant power. You are the consciousness from which all things proceed. You are the I am, and beside you there is no other. Good night, and thank you.